All right, that's a lot to follow there, but I would say I think you and I have
Sorry.
actually fairly similar Bouncing Souls experiences. So here's what I realized today. They're like kind of my personal Forrest Gump of punk rock in that they're always there. Like there's a lot. I have a lot of like punk rock milestones that just like it wasn't because of the Bouncing Souls, but they were just like they started to stick out. So I think, and it's like they were definitely not the only band in that situation for me. But I think because the music is so good, it probably definitely resonates. Of like, okay, I remember that's Bouncing Souls. But there's a few specifics. I want to say, and I'll tie in some of these stories to my list so we can kind of keep it going. But
yeah,
and so let me say, my list is not ordered. I really just had trouble with the general order. I kind of have, but it's not ordered. So the first song I want to talk about, though, and it is on my list, is a song that's on your list, was the Ballad of Johnny X. Because not only was this the first Bouncing Soul song I had ever heard, it is around one of the first punk rock songs I ever heard.
Wow.
Yeah. So there is a video on my channel, and the thumbnail is really corny. It's got me holding the Warped Tour 01 comp saying a comp changed my life. And that's a little clickbaity, but not really. Because I knew what punk was in the sense that I knew what Green Day and the Offspring and Blink did was different than like Korn, but I didn't really have like a literacy for it until I got the Warped Tour 01 comp, which I was kind of discovering it a little bit. I won't say I wasn't discovering it, but I didn't really own a lot of it. I had like that and maybe Rancid Stuff. I don't know which is first. So my two favorite songs though from that comp is it was Rancid Sick Sick World. That's not how I discovered Rancid, but I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then, who knows? Like, okay, Rancid 2000, of course, that's what I ended up not being as into, but that was on there. And the Ballad of Johnny X was on there. And I have plenty of songs I love on there. No Use for a Name does Enjoy the Silence cover. That's good. Newfound Glory does a deep cut on there. But the Ballad of Johnny X was on there. And again, kind of different than anything you had ever heard, but a pretty good entry into music.
Yeah.
And so that's all I knew about the Bouncing Souls for a little while, which was crazy because you told a story about your friend. Well, like the first, I would say, real punk rocker I ever knew. And by real punk rocker, and I was like, what do I mean by that? Well, he had a mohawk and a criminal record. So I guess that's what makes him a punk. Like, I mean, it's a real punk rocker. But like,
not a bad criteria.
Like looking back, this dude was a total poser. Like, not like through my lens now.
That's
like,
awesome.
but he lived in the city. He was, breaking into churches, breaking into schools at night and all kinds of stuff. Like he was like,
really?
But his favorite band was the Bouncing Souls. And again,
that's awesome.
So the first album I hear is How I Spent Your Summer Vacation. And I do not understand at all how this dude with the mohawk and the criminal record, his favorite band,
isn't that wild?
Souls. So I was going to tell a version of that story already, but it's like, no, I actually have a similar connection. So Bouncing Souls, and to further context, I tell you this all the time. The person that got me into punk was not a guy. It was actually a girl that I was into. The dude with the mohawk and the criminal record was her ex-boyfriend. So the dude indirectly kind of got me into punk because she got me into punk, and she would say, oh, interesting. And then eventually we all kind of hung out. He actually was a cool guy. And it's funny. And I always think about this because he liked Bouncing Souls and didn't like I knew who the Casualties were because of him, but didn't like him because he hung out with them one time and they had hairdressers. And so he swore out the Casualties.
Of course they had hairdressers. Have you seen their hair?
Have you seen his hair back in the day? Yes, you would not have been able to do anything else, but that's just a funny anecdote how like he had no issue with the Bouncing Souls, but he just couldn't vibe with the Casualties.
That's funny, bro. I may have said this before on this channel. I'm not 100% sure, but you mentioned that was probably your first punk song you ever heard. And I want to throw my experience out there with that. I was laying on the floor in my bedroom in 1995 listening to a radio station, and I heard the opening chords for Time Bomb, dun, 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 dun. And I literally was like, I remember, dude, I don't know why it's so vivid in my brain. My memory is terrible, but I was laying down like this on my stomach, and my feet were behind me. Like I might have been kicking my feet and like throwing something. I don't know. I was a kid. I was just being obnoxious.
Being a kid, yeah.
Listening to it on a Sony boombox, and and it's just like this ska chord, and I was like, what is this? And that was like 95, early 95, I guess, whenever that record was getting promoted. It wasn't even out yet, I don't think, because the next year is when I went to go see Rancid and Metallica and the Ramones and Soundgarden. And I went on that based solely on hearing that song one time. Once. I heard it one time, and it literally did change my life. Yeah, dude, Rancid, Time Bomb. I'm trying to think of when I heard of Bouncing Souls. It was in the 90s. It was like 98, maybe 97. I was pretty young when I heard the Bouncing Souls. But yeah, Rancid was dude, Sick Sick World is a really good song though. I have that 12-inch single. It's got like 4 songs on it. It's like 2 on each side. One of them Sick Sick World. It might be a bootleg. I don't even know. But yeah, dude, that's a freaking good song.
Isn't it? It's funny. So I had that, and then I bought Rancid 2000. And so like I started at like hardcore Rancid and ended up at like, oh wait, this is actually like the most like emotional kind of band that there actually is in this whole genre. Other than the one we're talking about tonight. Like actually we're kind of
for real. No, I mean that's pretty accurate. So we need to do a top 10 Rancid songs video one day, but I don't know if we can do a top 10. It might have to be like a top 25 or something, dude. Top 10 is gonna be hard.
I'm looking forward to the research on that one for sure.
I mean, I've been researching that for my whole life.
I'm also kind of not though too, because it's also
right, dude. It's gonna take so much work.
When you make it's funny because like when you make a list, you have to make this, and sometimes like they're very easy. Like there are distinctions, and I think there's distinction with the Bouncing Souls, but it's like. Or with Rancid, it would be the case, but it's so wide. I mean, especially bands that have 30 plus years of a catalog makes it a little bit different. I mean, so
the next
shout out for that as well. Like, you know,
the next few weeks of content that we're dropping, specifically podcasting, we've got a top 10 bands. We're just going to talk about our favorite top 10 bands, and then we're going to do an alkaline trio, excuse me. Like album ranking, and then a top 10 Alkaline Trio songs video like in December to prep for January with their new record, right? I think we have a lot of work cut out through the end of the year, because I think maybe we should start like maybe prepping for that Rancid record. That's going to be a lot of work, bro. That's going to be hard.
That's why I'm glad we're communicating ahead of time, just so we can actually, because you can tell now we're really getting into the research on these, and we're going pretty deep on these. And those ones,
not just that, but we've got a rhythm now that like this is an indefinite thing. I don't plan on ever stopping this unless something happens. So like, you know, the better we get at it, the more fun we get at it, the better research we can do, the more we can utilize the footage for other content for people that don't want to sit through a podcast. Like, I get it, man. I don't necessarily want to sit through a podcast either. I like doing clips and stuff. I'm having a lot of fun doing that. So yeah, let's move on to your next song. I'm sorry for that detour. Sure. The first punk song thing got me really excited. I was like, let's talk about that. Yeah.
So another thing I realized is not only do I consider the Bouncing Souls, not necessarily my first, but definitely they're at the beginning, but I consider that Gold record, which I misstated the name of it earlier, as my last punk record. And what I mean by that is I talked about that timeline of the 05, 06. Well, that was really the last, like, I think that was maybe the last thing that the last like CD I ever really bought was probably the Gold record. Like I bought other CDs of like replacing stuff, but that was like the last like new thing. And I bought it. Let me tell you. So I had this whole experience summer of 06 where I didn't realize it was that gap year summer for me where like, so my plans for like the future, I didn't really have, I used to be an audio engineer or run a record label. Those are the two things I would put on my stuff at school because I didn't really know, but really my plan was like to be on the Warped Tour.
Nice.
As both a teacher now and an adult and a parent, I'm like, what a stupid plan that was to just be like, I didn't really have a tangible way. I thought I did. I thought, oh yeah, our band is totally, because all the other guys are kind of totally be in on it once we're not in high school anymore. And we'll all want to sleep on. And turns out 2 of the other guys in the band were, they just didn't want to do it with me. But that's a whole story for another story.
You know, I've been in that boat myself.
So one of them literally, like I was saying, there's someone I know who makes his living making music, and he likes music because of me. But anyway, I digress. But my point is like, I didn't realize that all that changed. And it's that sort of physical change. I was not in high school. I was not a kid anymore. And like, I was so dead set against ever going to college or anything like that. Like, believe it or not, I was so like against that and so hated the idea that people were telling me to like, no, I'm a fucking punk rocker. Like, I'm going to do my own damn thing. Like, I'm going to do, I'm going to make my own way. Wasn't very much cut out for it, turns out, but I was going to do that. Anyway, I say all that to say is I
feel like we were the same person. And then that's where we go poof and split up into 2 people. Because I did that. I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to college.
You actually did it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, I think I'll go ahead and go. So yeah, I guess you could have had face tattoos to look forward to.
Well, and so what I did instead actually was I just lived a really like I always say, like I had my normie era, which was very important in my life. Like I had to learn kind of how to be an adult for those like and then I got back to punk rock and totally lost the plot of everything. But so I had to before I entered that era, anyway, going to the 06 Warped Tour, it was kind of funky because I didn't really have anyone to go with other than like a friend of mine who went, but just wasn't literally into it. And I was like, oh yes, I guess nobody goes to Warped Tours anymore. Like, okay, whatever. And then I get there. And really, I was only into seeing, if I can recall, there was like a couple of bands. And I discovered actually a few bands on that 06 Warped Tour. I remember that too. I was like, hey, I don't really like any of these bands. And then I get interviewed by like, I think it was like Fuse TV or someone, and they asked me, who are you into? And I remember saying the Bouncing Souls and whoever else I was into on that Warped Tour. Like, oh, I'm glad the old school fans are still coming and like, I was still like 18, kind of like, I like 6 months ago, I was in high school. I didn't know what the hell was happening.
Dude, that's hilarious.
It was like, what the hell is going on? So anyway, I saw that. So Bouncing Souls are playing like, not only, they're my old guy band, like, but that's one of my bands. Like that's an Epitaph band. That's from my neck of the woods. I'm thinking. So I go, and I'm such a big fan back then. I didn't know they had a new record that came out like 2 months earlier. Bro. But it's Warped Tour. So like the best part about Warped Tour is if there's a new album, guess what? You're buying it at Warped Tour, especially back then. It wasn't as much as vinyl is now, or where it's a different kind. So it's like, it's the CD.
I think back then they were selling CDs for like $10. You could
just especially at a Warped Tour. Yeah. So like, and that's how they would they were promoted. So I got that album, and I put in the first time I listened. I remember the car. I had this really shitty. It was a really nice car that I couldn't afford any of the parts for because it was so nice, and I was 19. That I had a CD player that it wasn't one of those breakaway things, so they wouldn't steal it. It literally would just come out. And so it would sit right there, and the speaker
the whole thing would?
The whole deck would come out. Yes.
Whoa.
Like so I had a cholo like who knew how to steal cars, who rewired the thing.
I had a few friends like that.
He was like, I can get your thing working. He's like, it'll look stupid, but it'll play music for you. And again, punk rock, 19, like that's all. That's literally
it doesn't matter.
And they're like, oh, it sounds crappy, cool. It's more authentic. Again, like really high intellect.
I used to drive around with that boombox in my back seat. Because my stereo that I had in the car didn't work. I had a boombox with I had the cable going out to it to a thing that was that I would plug into the cigarette lighter. So I had like an extension cord plugged into the cord with a boombox in the back seat. Every time I hit a bump, it would skip. So I used to bring tapes and put those in instead because it was a tape player. Dude, bro, come on, man. We used to. Yeah, it was good times.
It's so funny because now I have every song ever written of all time right in this little thing and can play anywhere. And look at all the hard work back then. And why I say all that, it's something very long-winded with everything tonight, but particularly because the only CD that crossed over basically from my youth life at one house to like my adult life was because I got this Bouncing Souls record that was in that car with me all the time listening to Nothing Golden. So the first time I listened to it, I kind of didn't like it. I was like, oh, so they're doing what all my other bands do. They're serious now, which Anchors Away is not a silly album. I don't know why, but I kind of like.
No, it's very serious.
I got a little hostile towards it like the first time, but again, it's 2006, so I have to listen to it again because it's the only thing in the car. And I was like, oh, and then it became immediately probably it's not my second anymore, but at the time it's like, oh, this is my second favorite like Bouncing Souls record. I say that to point out two songs. The Gold song.
Okay.
The Gold song, just like True Believers, they sound like being at a punk show. And I don't know, like, I feel bodies compressing on me when I hear those songs in a good way. You know, because I feel like we're chanting because they're
what was the other one? You said that one and which one?
That one and True Believers and a few other ones, but they have that same exact where I feel like I'm on the rail when I hear, like, I feel some of the physical sensations of that. That's like what those songs evoke in me. Also, the intro on Gold Song, and it's really, and this is what I'm saying, it's that whole buildup they do. Is it like the breaking, like the glass bottle breaks or something? Like, to me, that's like it's the intro of the album, but it's such a good intro for, like, I don't know, like if I has entrance music as a wrestler or something. It's almost
it's a good
like shit's on. Like it's almost like we're in the Old West. Like, let's do this, and the shit is the punk show maybe, but shit's on.
Okay, did you ever make mixtapes like on tape? Okay, so I was like a god tier mixtape maker when I was a kid. Like I used to make mixtapes for all of my friends. I'm actually going to do a whole thing where I make mixtapes now once a month and give it away my Patreon.
That's cool.
Based on the songs we listen to on Sunday night. And the Gold song is a great mixtape opener. That song will get you into wanting to hear other stuff. Like you can go into that song into like a really fast punk song, or you can go from that one to something a little more somber, and it fits both moods very well. And so depending on the person you're making the tape for, You could go into The Unseen, or you can go into a Dropkick Murphys song and be just fine.
There's a few women in their mid-30s now that got way too many mixtapes from me in 2004.
Let's go.
Sure. They're very familiar with like, Sugar Cult and Alkaline Trio. But how
do you feel? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how do you feel that their song and their sound translate? Because I didn't talk about this much. I stuck to mostly lyrical stuff because to me that's what the Bouncing Souls were, because of when I kind of discovered them. And back then I was just a lyric guy all through and through. But I feel like their songs translate to a live show very well. I've seen them play like 4 or 5 times, and not once did I think anything other than, yes, I cannot wait to see them again.
Well, I think it's exactly what I told you about, like how that song makes me feel like I'm at a show.
Okay,
and I think it's
that might have been why I asked you that. Actually,
it's that kind of. So there's a very much and you said this on True Believers, and I'm going to echo this when I talk about True Believers. There's a sort of communal feel to their music, and I think that's what we're kind of getting at,
bro.
And so here's what it is for me. And so True Believers is on my list. Obviously, we'll just put that there.
Yeah.
But it's at the top. And to me, here's my thing. I don't really have and never really have had a good network of friends in punk. I really. Like my friend group as a younger kid got blown up, and I kind of created it out of punk, and it got blown up. Like, we're basic, and we're all actually still friends now, but like we kind of didn't. Then we sort of split off and didn't grow up as punk. And I live in the crappiest part of the country when it comes to cool stuff. You live in a more backwoods place than I do, but at least you were closer to cities and stuff though too. You know what I mean?
That's true.
I live in small town America. It's just not. China.
Mine was like a 40-minute drive, but within 40 minutes I could get into downtown Houston and go see a punk show, go get in a fight, go get some pizza, and then come back home and pass out in the front seat of my friend's car, wake up in the sun coming up, and oh god, I'm sweaty and gross. And, bro, I mean, dude, the shit that I used to do, man, I don't think you would have done it, man, because it was stupid. Like, like I made myself very uncomfortable a lot for no reason. I just thought it was cool. Like, oh man, to be young and stupid again. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing with me is like I only felt connection to other punk rockers when I'm at like the punk show, so to speak. And I honestly like.
Oh, really?
I still kind of have that. And that's why I don't mind going to shows by myself and all that sort of thing. Because I just like, and I'm not a social person naturally. I don't mind meeting like to me that's like that. If you need to, that punk rock creates such a community when you see it live. That like sometimes you just kind of you have it, like you got what you needed there. And I think Bouncing Souls do that almost on CD, which is amazing.
Yeah,
usually you can only do it live.
That's interesting. I go to shows by myself a lot too, but I'm the kind of guy that's super talkative, so I'll almost always find somebody to talk to. But if you go to a show with me, ask Carissa; she'll tell you it's kind of weird because I do clam up a little bit, and I tend to just kind of walk around and then get my camera out and start doing some filming. And I think this is something that needs to be brought up. I think that punk rock, excuse me, punk rock is the only genre of music that does what it does, where people feel the way they do about it, where, or at least to the degree, right? Because I know people that love pop music and they genuinely love it, but that's a small group of people, man. But with punk, all punk rockers feel this way about the music because it's not just about the music. It's about your lifestyle, maybe your upbringing. You're usually an outcast of some kind. You were usually not very popular in school. This is not the place where the cool kids went. This is the place where the nerds and the dorks and the freaks, and that's why these song titles have those words in them. That's why you have songs that are anthemic and brotherhood songs about loyalty, songs about sticking around, because that's what this is. It's a lifestyle. And I think it's funny because people, and I'm sure you've dealt with this too, they kind of go, why is that such a big deal to you? And you're like, well, why is it not a big deal to you?
Well, why do you like the Steelers is what I want to tell people when they say that. Why are all these things that mean nothing in the course of real life?
Like the football team, the Steelers?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like that's what I bond with. I bond with music.
Root for strangers? Like, why do you
right?
Like, yes. But it's also, I also can't explain it either. I also, like, you and I know we don't have to say it, and we know what it is. Like, it's a weird. You're almost like, you're sort of bonded by music in a way that,
it gives you
have that. Yeah, it's
like, nothing else has the community that we have, dude. Metal shows, like they have. Like, it's because of the lyrics, man.
That's normal society to me. Metal shows are normal society to me. Like, Punk is
Well,
different. Like, I don't know what punk is. It's
that
different.
normal people like metal.
Yeah.
Normal people don't like punk.
That's
And,
what it is. There
and
you
so
go.
and so punk rock is different. It is different. It is special. I can understand and I fully admit to and accept the fact that it gets a little silly, especially with the fashion and the clothing and stuff and the hairstyles and whatnot. But there's a reason why in punk rock, when something like the situation with the anti-flag guys happens, it is a big deal, and those dudes do get kicked out and shunned. I feel like our community is a little more close knit than, say, metal or hip hop or something else. I don't know. We've been talking about this music for a long time on this channel, and we don't really talk about that. Punk rock is special, and it's kind of corny. It's a little cheesy, but listen to these words on these songs and listen to how it makes you feel. Understand it. People that don't get it, don't get it. Who cares? But it's funny. Have you had people that ask you, like, why do you take it so serious?
No, nobody gets it. Nobody I know gets it. Like,
It's
nobody.
weird, isn't it?
It's weird because there's other super fans of music culture. Not even music. I guess that's the difference. Other people, unless you're like a Deadhead or an ICP fan, you're not really a fan of music or of a subculture in the same. I think that's the biggest thing. Like the people I find most relatable with my interest in punk rock are like my ex-in-laws who are like biker gang people. They're not actually in a biker gang, but they have like biker communities. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like that is the most analogous thing where it's like, oh, they're all going to travel to Phoenix this weekend to go do this thing, and they're all going to be friends, even the people they kind of don't know, but because they and they're all like, like they're like we would call them poser bikers or whatever, but like because they are involved in this certain type of lifestyle, they kind of there's something to it like that. But
they might be like in a biking, they might not be in the club, but they're diehard.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like there's assholes within punk, and there's normal societal structures within punk, and all those things definitely exist. But like even if someone's not into punk anymore, and you say like, oh yeah, I was into punk, and like there's a certain code that and there's a certain like language you can speak to people with, and it's not really politically like aside, but it's not politics in terms of like who you root for, but there's a certain politics to how you think, how you speak, not how you speak, but how you.
Well, there's a code. Like you can't
there's a code.
We are accepting to everybody, but there's a little bit of elitism. But I think that's with every group of people. But like by and large, punk rock is accepting and willing to let anybody be involved to any degree that they want to be. And I don't know a lot of other things that you could say that about. And like I want to specifically shout out my two friends, Josh and Chris, who are not lifelong punk rockers, who have just recently started listening to some of it with a very open mind, who for a long time, I've known Josh for some years now, never cared about Rancid, thought it was stupid, didn't like it. Today, finally was like, I'm going to listen to a little bit of it. He's going to travel with us to Green Day. He already has his ticket. He's going to go with us to Austin. This is a guy that does not like, dude, that's amazing to me. I'm like really, really happy that he's going. And he's going for different reasons. He's going just to go be with his buds when we're doing this thing that is so important to us. But like, those are two friends of mine that, 3 years ago weren't listening to this music. And when they finally got past like the surface level noise of it all, they started looking at the lyrics. They're like, oh, dude, this stuff is really good. Like, oh, these guys are really good musicians. Oh man, this is like, I like the lyrics. You know what I'm saying? So I do think punk stands out. I think it stands up on its own as like something that's special. And I will shut up about it. I just really wanted to point that out. It's important to bring that up. And I think all these lyrics got me all emotional tonight, dude. It's weird.
Well, so oh geez. Okay, so speaking, let me continue to bring us down here.
Oh man,
one of the other songs I'm going to include from the Gold record is "Letters from Iraq." So the here's a few things. First of all, I just want to commentate out so Anchors Away is probably the Bouncing Souls most quote political record, and they were a band that like was kind of uneasy being in the political spectrum, even though they didn't like deny their politics. They just thought it was kind of weird, like, oh, we're not like we're a band that sings about girls, like that was just and I don't think they really felt like it's. Here's the thing, like I don't hold the opinion that you need to be the uber informed about everything to have an opinion on things. And so I think like when you compare,
well, yeah, that's stupid. Not everybody's the same level of informed.
Yeah. So when you compare like them just saying like it's better to live on your feet than die on your knees. Yes, that doesn't have all the dynamics of say like an anti-flag song on the same subject matter, But I think it still conveys the message, and there's nothing wrong with it. Now, Letters from Iraq was an actual letter from a soldier that was sent to the Bouncing Souls. And then again, so carrying over on because we're telling a lot of stories today. So again, that was the quote, the last record. So there's two events. There is, well, not two events, but there was that Warped Tour is like the silly one. So a year later, it's still kind of, I've still listened to some other stuff, but it's still kind of the only connection to like my past I really feel in a meaningful way is that record. 2007, my stepbrother passes away in Iraq. And it's
damn, bro, I'm sorry about that.
And it's like that's a hell of a thing to drop there. But it was like, there's a few other songs, like For Here at Infirmary has a few songs that just have a really big resonance with that. But again, it's like Letters from, and that was my one. And I'm in that same car that I'm telling you about. Like it's the last legs of that card. So that event, and I like get to bring it up. That was the event. Like everyone has that one thing. Like, what's the thing that made you go from whatever kind of path you were on to so that whole normie era where I really started to enter? Because I was still just kind of like a loser before then. Like I would have jobs for 3 weeks, I would quit them. I would, I just wasn't. I was aimless.
I think we all have that to a certain degree at some point in our lives.
Yeah, and I was literally 18, 19. Like it was that age where you're too old to have like young fun, but you're too young to have like real fun. You know what I mean? You're in that like kind of like just whatever. And so it's like, and again, it was such a dark time for me that I did come out of actually pretty positive, but it's like it was one of those dark time things. And it's what we were just talking about. What's there with you? And it was a lot of the gold record, honestly, but it's like that song specifically. It's just like all the emotion, all the anger. That's what Bouncing Souls can do, because they're such a pretty band. I think we could say that. Like their lyrics are literally like they're beautiful, and it like
their lyrics are wonderful, man. It's like, really hard to beat their lyrics.
It's like there's literally a U-log as part of one of their songs, like just wood.
What's a U-log? Or what?
Like so now for like Christmas, you'll have on like a channel that'll just be like the fireplace burning. That's what that Bouncing Souls is. It's like a U-log.
Bro,
so it's like a U-log burning.
I didn't know that's what that was.
Yeah. So, but my point with that is they are still punk rockers, and they can still be funny. And they can kind of convey, and Letters from Iraq's not really, it's really more of a story, but it's sort of like what the fuck are we doing? And why are we still doing this shit? And it's 2006, and what the fuck is going on? Like those are my emotions right there. And Letters from Iraq helped me sort of articulate and process that whole experience. There's a lot about like one of these days I'll make like a Patreon video from like different experiences and what they did, because that's a little too deep to really go in on that on like a free
but some of dude, it's weird how songs will, like, if you hear a song during a specific moment in your life, if that moment suddenly becomes important or devastating or whatever, you could have like a song that's like really happy, but every time you hear it, it makes you cry because it's something, or you can have a song that's really depressing, but it happened in a really, really great point in your life. And it's like, you have these like positive
fond memories
fond memories of that song. You're like, isn't he talking about like self-harm? And you're like, yeah, but man, every time I hear this, dude, I feel so great. Because when I was blah, 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 this happened.
So quick side story. One day my son was kind of like giving me crap about,
dude, we're side questing like a motherfucker tonight.
Yeah, and we also keep side questing to Rancid. So I've always held the position that Rancid not only is the saddest band as we talked about, they're also like the most positive band, I think, in general. Like there's a certain uplifting spirit I've always felt.
Oh yeah.
And so like I've always just ran with that, and I've never received pushback when I've kind of brought that up with people. But my son's a teenager, and he's like, yeah, you just like all your negatives. I was like, no, Rancid is literally like the most positive. I'm going on this big old thing. So we're in the car, and I'm just going through the Rancid shuffle, and it's nothing but the most like every Rancid song that's like in the opposite direction. I just couldn't buy a positive and I couldn't think of one off the top of my head. I just couldn't buy, like, everything was just like every like crack house song that Rancid has was coming up. Flip. Can something from Indestructible get on this? Come on, can we do this,
dude? That's a palatable album, dude.
Okay, so those are the two bookends. Now let's get to the creamy middle, which is
come on, creamy middle. Let's go.
So I love Hopeless Romantic. I love the song Hopeless Romantic. Now I wasn't aware of this record.
That's what you should.
Until the first time I saw them, I think it was 04 Warped Tour was the first time I ever saw Bouncing Souls. And they played this song that everyone sang, and I didn't know the lyrics to it. And it was like kind of because they're really heavy on Hopeless Romantic, the song.
Oh, the title track. Okay.
People say what they think, and I was like, "What is this?" Because they're playing all this Anchors Away stuff in that era. Everything's real, like, and you're at the Warped Tour, so it's kind of a weird vibe on
hopeless romantic,
and all of a sudden they bust that out, and it's
hopeless.
And I was like, "Oh, that is the best like love girl song of like pop punk of all time!" Like just like that, like they just did that. Cool. Did that. So Hopeless Romantic. The other one I have a few others.
Is that on your list?
That's on my list. Yeah, No Hopeless Romantic.
Oh wow, it's really high up there for me too. Probably top 15, I would say.
87 was on my honorable mention. I just thought I would mention that with Hopeless Romantic because that was on
87, 87. Which one has that one go?
It's one of those biographical ones.
Hold on. Yeah, keep going. I'll look it up.
Okay. And then so those were the ones I kind of highlighted from there. But of course, I cannot talk about the Bouncing Souls with all my other interests and not mention Ole, 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 Ole.
So there's a couple of songs that they have where I was feeling that way, and that is one of them. And so is East Coast Fuck You. Like that song I love that song, but I'm not from the East Coast, so what do I care about it? You know what I'm saying?
Very, very quintessential Bouncing Souls. I think East Coast Fuck You is like just very Bouncing Souls, but again, it's like very almost niche to them.
Right.
It's funny because you don't realize the influence that song, like not the Bouncing Souls, but that song has had on other parts of culture and other parts. Like, so it's a soccer chant merged with like a different type of soccer chant. It's become its own thing. And like so it's the direct roots aren't with the Bouncing Souls, but like it kind of is, like anyone who knows what they're talking about. So it's so refreshing every now and then you'll find like an old punk, like, so I don't like soccer. I'm a big sports fan, but I don't really like soccer. But if there's any sport that crosses over with punk of the mainstream sports, the two of them are hockey and soccer. Yeah. And you know, and it's like, God, and the Bouncing Souls are such a big part of the way they've been integrated into soccer with that song. But also like we the Bouncing Souls, no one can beat us. And
we drink beer and wear Adidas. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so I don't like soccer, but go to a bar when a soccer game is happening.
Yeah.
And it is the funnest time that you've ever. That's what that song evokes for me.
They have a lot of really silly songs that I just couldn't put on this list, but that I still truly, genuinely love. I like Your Eyes. Mm-hmm. I like your ass so much I want to poke them out. Like that song is awesome. And then I Like Your Mom. That song is honestly like that's the one off that album that's good. I like your mom and it's not bad. I want to marry her and be your dad. I like your mom. I like your mom.
Argyle with the first like AFI record, and just be like the silly punk that these bands didn't turn into. Like,
dude, for real though.
Like
for real.
Okay, so I think I'm looking through my list. Is that the last of the funny stuff? I think everything else that was it. I didn't make my final cut, but I did have Bully the Jukebox on there as well.
Dude, okay. I was waiting to ask you about that song. I love that song. It's not a top 10 Bouncing Soul song, but it is one of those songs that when it comes on, everybody has a great time singing it.
It's a very Bouncing Soul song. I think that's the way to make it.
Yes.
It's kind of the way like East Coast Fuck You. Like it's just a very Bouncing Souls song. So I think that's pretty much it on the fun stuff. Oh, and I also had Here We Go on there as an honorable mention. I just love Here We Go. Here we go. Here we go. Coffee if I listen to that in the morning, like I'm good. Okay. So and I'll go through these rather quick. So I think you had basically every one of these on your list. So I have Night Train on my list.
Okay. So absolutely.
And I've told this story before, so I'll be brief with it. So back in 2004, whenever it was, I was ironically slacking off in my English class at who I teach at right now. Yes, I was slack, but I was reading poetry. I just wasn't reading the book that we were reading. I had the Anchors Away song booklet, and I would read that song booklet every day.
That's awesome.
So a girl I had a crush on texted me like, "Hey, what are you doing over there? Like, why are you reading this little book?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm really into these lyrics." She's like, "You must be really into it. That's all you're focused on." And it was, dude. I'm pretty sure it was either Night Train or Anchors Away, the song Anchors Away. And I was like, "Oh, this is so awesome." Fast forward, we have our whole little, summer fling and all that, and then we have the big break.
Oh yeah.
And so initially, every one of these songs was dedicated to that specific woman because it was like you say, right at the right time. You know what I mean? And now I relate these songs to a lot of other situations, but that's where they were first. Like that's that. And so like I still think that like that situation means kind of nothing to me now, but I still think of like how did I feel about it then? Now I think of like what these songs mean. Specifically, we talked about that small town stuff. Like I hate where I live. Like I want to be out of here so bad. Like I'm not even saying that as a gimmick. Like I don't think I could survive anywhere else. That's part of why I haven't done it. But like I hate this like this town is dead to me. And quite honestly,
why do you hate it so much?
It sucks. Like small towns. So here's the thing. I don't care what Jason Aldean or anyone says. Small towns freaking suck. Try it in a small town. There's nothing to try out here. What are you gonna try in a small town?
Bro, I don't care what Jason Aldean says.
Yeah, small towns suck. Like, because you know what? Small towns are not quaint. they're not like you see in the movie. They're not like the small towns in the Hallmark movie. That
no, they're definitely not like that.
No,
dude,
they're just like meth. They're just like meth breeding grounds. That's what small towns in America really are.
Dude, here's the thing, man, is that I used to live like in Houston, right? I don't live in Houston anymore. I'm an hour from Houston now. Dude, it's shocking what like 20 minutes will do to a 20-minute drive just outside the city. Like you get to the suburbs and then you just go 20 more minutes. That's where I live now. I basically live in like you live in a small town. I live in like a small town. Mm-hmm. Like I do live in the kind of small town they're talking about. There's a railroad track and a Dairy Queen. Yeah. And like, dude, my neighbors dropping N-bombs and like stuff like that. Like it is wild out here, bro. I thought, dude, that's the thing is like Texas isn't really like that. Small towns everywhere are like that. But like, I really truly didn't think people still behave like that just out in the open. Like I have no doubt that people do that in their own home, like assholes that they are. But like out in the open, you don't even know my name. We haven't shook hands or nothing. You're going to say that word? I was so offended, bro. I don't get offended very often, man. But yeah, small towns do suck.
Kind of similar to you. I live about 40 miles away from the nearest city, which is funny because the city's fairly big. So when I meet people, I live closer to them than a lot of people that they think live closer to them. It's just there's that actual divide of like the zip code divide.
And you're in like Albuquerque area?
Yeah, but so not only there's a Native American reservation basically around every corner of Albuquerque. So you got to go through that, and then I live in a small town outside of there. So like it's a drive, it's a haul. Like you don't know anyone from out there, but like to the extent that you know humanity, it's So like when I'm in town, I'm the hick. You know what I mean? In town here, I'm basically.
Isn't that weird, dude? Like
over there, yeah, and that's what like it sucks over here. Like I'm really not that extreme of a dude, but like. Over here, I kind of am in some way.
That is pretty funny.
It's a lot more repressed. Now, at the same time, I get to the big city and I realize how country I am, kind of.
Right.
And it's just one of those juxtapositions. So anyway, Night Train. Like when I think of like now, in particularly, like I'm not really like I'm here to be honest with you till my kids graduate, and then I'm moving out of here. Like that. Well, that's my perspective now.
Where do you want to move to?
I'll just move to Albuquerque. I'm tired of. I don't want to live in a small town anymore. That's what it comes down to. And so right now that's where this Night Train kind of stuff is. Like I feel personally, and this is the theme of Anchors Away, I feel like my life here is basically done. And I want, as Bouncy Soul says, another song I'm going to mention again, I want to start again. And so that's why to me, this record now, when I went through it, it really resonated with a lot of my just current, like, it's a lot about where I'm at is just like moving on. That's literally what Anchors Away, I think, is. And if you look at it from the band is musically, they're never the same after Anchors Away. They moved on.
They really weren't. Man, when we first met, you were going through a lot, and I really didn't know how to say it because I wasn't really your friend yet. But boy, I was feeling for you, man. I could tell that you were like, it wasn't like you were like crying about nothing, but I could tell like your shoulders were sagging and like just the weight of the situation was so much. I bet you do want to get the hell out of there.
I do. Like, I want to get the hell out of literally this house, and it's not even a bad place. And that's again, I think that's the theme of that. Like, it's not even. It's like that song and the Rascal Flatts song, I'm Moving On, both have that same sort of theme. And it's like that Rascal Flatts song was the other one, but the lyrics are exactly that. Like, I've done what I could, I've sown what I like. Again, the Beatles could be a country band. They're not. They could, but they have that sort of songwriter, and I mean a real country band. Like,
is that what the Rascal Flatts is?
Yeah, they're like they're pop country.
I have no idea what that is. I mean, I know what pop country is.
They were like that first. They were the first run of pop country, before it was really like they look like guys from NSYNC, but they just, and I don't really know what made them country. They were just on country, kind of like pop punk. Some ways, like, what makes this punk other than it's just with punk? But they have that's funny. I randomly heard a song that I had from like 2001 that they had. It was called "I'm Moving On." I was like, kind of how I feel. And I heard these Bouncy Soul songs. Like, yeah, that is how. So I'll put.
They can definitely play an acoustic version of all these songs. That's for sure.
Anchors Away and Night Train. I'll just put it. They're both there because they had that same sort of theme of like.
Anchors Away was
they kind of run together to me a little bit as
songs. The title track was one that like it kind of got trimmed off, but it was up there. It was like in the top 15 for sure.
And
it had to go.
Lighter note, so like the biggest celebrity fan of the music we listen to, currently disgraced wrestler CM Punk, but best friends of Lars Fredrickson.
Wait, is he disgraced because of like a something in real life?
Well, nothing that we couldn't like have him on the show for if he ever wanted to come on. But he just within the world of wrestling, he's like the worst coworker of all time.
Oh, is
So
he's like an
so he
asshole or something?
so he was always like I always found him super relatable because he is like he's literally the punk, he's the rancid guy, he's the punk rocker in the machine. And he was like physically, he didn't look like everyone else, like body types and everything. And he broke through the system and all that. But he kind of has gotten high on his own supply in recent years, and he's kind of turned into the kids and heroes sort of situation. Well, basically, he doesn't realize it, but he's become that establishment that he hated so much. Like he is talked about, so for context, this is a wrestling podcast. I'm suddenly doing there. He is talked about by the younger wrestlers the way like his generation talked about the Hulk Hogan's and those guys of like the guys that are keeping you down, the asshole. Like he has become that, which in itself is a punk rock tale in some ways because that also doesn't happen.
I don't really understand wrestling. I don't hate it. Like I watched The Rock on Joe Rogan today, and I grew up watching it. I kind of stopped when Stone Cold stopped wrestling. I was kind of like, all right, I'm done. But I always got the impression that he was kind of a dork. Like
he is, and that's why he says he's into punk rock because he's a dork. Like,
oh.
Well, I mean, you're meaning it in a different way. Yeah, you're meaning it.
Yeah. No, like, I mean, he came to the UFC and I thought, okay, this guy's entitled and he's getting something he shouldn't even have. He's getting a shot he doesn't deserve. And I just, then I watched him. He was in a movie that I watched and I was like, okay, he's not good at this either. He's not a good fighter. He's not a good actor. Is he a good wrestler?
Physically, he was never the best. Character-wise and promo-wise, like the actual getting you to invest in him, he's one of the best of all time. Yeah.
Really?
He traditionally always operated. He's very punk rock in that he operated. He was, they called him an indie darling back in the day. It's exactly like punk rock. Actually, he made his own kind of way, especially in his era where the underground basically fell apart. So what happened basically in wrestling, once the big companies, again, very similar to music, once the big companies kind of took over, all the underneath stuff eventually just got sucked up and died. And your local promoter can't compete with the big promoter.
Okay.
So all that went away. But then you still had kind of this next generation that didn't really have anywhere to learn the craft. So they basically did what the old timers hate this. Now it's pretty common, just indie wrestling shows, which is basically DIY wrestling show. Like literally that's what it is. And you will have trained performers very much now. So it's very much more a regulated thing. But back CM Punk and his friend Colt Cabana there in Chicago, like they just had the same, and they would just tour literally in barns having this same match going on and on. And it's a bit of a digression here, but the reason why I was bringing him up, because in the Ring of Honor, his character, when he's a good guy, he's like, I'm fighting the system. I'm fighting for the right things. And he's legitimately straight edge. So it's like, so when it's a good guy, it's like, I fight for the right things that, stay clean, basically a classic, like good guy. When he's the bad guy, like he was the straight edge savior. It's basically every asshole straight edge you've ever known. And he's just like, he has like this whole group with him, like, and he just lectures them about not eating right.
So he's like, he goes from being like your everyman guy to like a militant straight edge guy.
Elitist, and they sort of dressed him because he had natural, almost like a Charles Manson type of look. And they're also implying like, and he came up with all this himself, like this whole story. Like he's like, oh, no, I can. He's like, and he has a girlfriend at the time, and he's like, and this is how he's relatable to guys like, he's like, everyone kind of doesn't like you. She told him. Why don't you lean into that? Because the guy cannot keep it's very punk rock and he cannot keep a good relationship in anywhere you go. Problem is he kind of, that level of fame, notoriety, scrutiny, and the punk rockness in him and his upbringing caused him to be just very paranoid, I think, of everything. And the wrestling business does this to its performers because it's such an underhanded business that everyone gets pretty paranoid. And so I think he's internalized that paranoia and that don't trust anyone.
Dude, I didn't know any of this about him at all. This is crazy, dude.
And that's why, like, so last year I done as a Riot Fest or whatever, one of those summer shows that Rancid played, and he was there outside and they dedicated, it was one of the times he was exiled from, so he beat up his boss.
Wait, like real life?
Yeah. Wait, so his boss felt threatened that his life was in danger at a wrestling show back a few months ago. So he got into a fight backstage at a wrestling show 8 months, ruined like the whole promotion. So they put the title on, they were going to put the promotion behind him and some other people. Well, again, because of some slights and some other things and things people said about the media, he just goes into this press conference where he's in Chicago. He's the second city. He comes out all the Chicago music, all that stuff. He's a little injured after the show and he's a little pissed off at some of his coworkers. And he just spends the post event conference going off on his coworkers. I work with a bunch of yeah, I work with a bunch of fucking children. None of these guys know how to run it. But like, he just totally went
Is
off
that on YouTube somewhere?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Dude, and this is all real.
Yeah, so this is 100% real. So he goes back saying,
Wow.
now the people he's criticizing are not only his coworkers, but they happen to be VPs in the company he is criticizing. So they have to go confront him not only as like men, but as an HR issue because he's bad mouthing the company on TV. He goes back, a fight starts. His dog literally bites his boss. Like so he was suspended for like 9 months, all this stuff. It seemed like
it's not WWE, I assume, right?
No, AEW, which is the sister promotion on the which here. There's a whole real punk rock story with him and WWE. We'll get to it because he straight up walked out of WWE. He just said, "No, I'm not doing this." Like, and he walked out of something. So he does that.
I get really confused on what's real and what's scripted with this stuff.
Everything I'm talking about is always because I do the podcast on the legitimate stuff. When I've done I don't do podcasts on it anymore, but that's how I got my start in podcasting was in wrestling.
Okay,
I saw that to say that. And there's a whole but so no, he comes back, the boss thing. Let me close that loop. So he comes back where it's like a restraining order kind of thing where he has to literally be on a different television show than the people he fought with. So that happens. And then a younger guy pisses him off over something he said in an interview or something like that.
People are so dumb.
He confronts the young dude backstage and like corners the young dude. And the young dude, like, who was talking shit, like everyone said the young dude was kind of in the wrong until he took it too far. Well, then the boss comes and he has the boss cornered and he's got the boss cornered and threatened and all this. Needless to say, he was fired with cause and is currently unemployed. He might be watching the pod because he's into bouncing souls. He's got a bouncing souls tattoo like you do. So,
dude, I need to reach out to that fool and get him on the show.
Good luck with getting him on your podcast. I'll say that too because he's notoriously grouchy. He will go on podcasts occasionally, like maybe with you who don't really know his background, and he would talk punk rock. Like he would actually.
Oh yeah, I don't give a shit about wrestling. I would just talk about music.
He would do something like that. Now, so all that big old preamble to say when he was in the independents, he was kind of at the top, and then he eventually gets signed. Well, when he got signed, they ran. Now this is storyline. They were like, let's play with the internet. Like that was early on. People were still a little naive on the internet. Everyone's going to believe I'm signed. We're going to do our farewell show. And he had been a bad guy, but now he was going to be celebrated because he was leaving and, they were going to celebrate him. So he comes in, his entrance music for that last show is Anchors Away. So it's so emotional and the whole crowd and he's a big punk rocker. So everyone knows. And again, you got the scale of these shows, although they were very much like punk shows, although they were very famous and spread out worldwide. There's like 200 people they're in a gym. But distributed.
That's awesome.
But again, like punk rock distributed worldwide. And everyone, they're not punk rockers, but they all knew the Anchors Away. They're all singing along. And what they did was so brilliant is they actually pulled the switcheroo and he actually did like 5 other shows and they kept pulling that song and other parts out to get people like that was what they used to emotionally hook you. And then he was like, actually, I'm not signing with that. And then piss everyone off to come see it again next. And that's sort of the hook of wrestling is you get people interested in something, whether it's
I don't understand how you get into this stuff, bro.
It's kind of like punk rock in that it's literally its own language. It very much, but now I'm talking through it. It has all the parallels of like the indie level, the above, and all those things. So again, and so then when he came over to UFC, FS1 actually did a little mini doc on him, which Lars is actually. Anytime he's around, like Lars always has to be interviewed. It's like a contract stipulation, and the closeout montage of his training.
Wait! Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's actually his contract. I'm just saying him and Lars are best friends. So
okay, never mind. I misunderstood. Okay, I thought you meant like there's really some kind of stipulation.
No, so basically, I feel like Lars is kind of like Lars isn't really you would consider a famous person, but definitely like there's you put him in there and it conveys to like someone our age, like what you're trying to convey with this person, right? So and they're literally best friends. So like the whole closing montage of that UFC reality show, which kind of sucked, the reality show was all Bouncing Soul songs to close it out. And and in his DVD, they play they license it, and they never would license stuff for his DVDs, but he actually got it. The song you had said, "No progress made, just sitting around," like that. There's a whole montage of him running in that DVD. So that's I got in the way on that punk thing there, but that was he's very much a public promoter of the Bouncing Souls. So 2 more, and then
we got there. We got there.
That was a hell of a painful
dude, that was a
nobody who doesn't know about all this stuff is still listening, but it is what it is.
No, dude, we've lost all of our listeners by this point, and it is okay. It is okay.
The 2 more, and these are a little off the board. I kind of said all the conventional ones. Is I have another one from Anchors Away, which again, Anchors Away could just put the album on there. But I had Highway Kings, another kind of touring song. And that one, it doesn't have a particular like. other than like the thing about like Bouncing Souls can convey this, Pennywise. There's something about like a shitty day at work, or like the toughness of work that punk rock conveys so much. Like if punk rock, like
it's a blue collar.
There's certain, but even punk rock that I don't really think of as like blue collar. There's some punk rock, I don't, but all of it sort of helps you get through a day at work, and it evokes that feeling. And I feel like Highway Kings is one of those songs where it's like sitting here chasing our destiny, and it's like, yeah, I'm here at this factory building a cabinet, but I still feel like, you know, you're kind of like just that sort of seize the moment and everything sucks. And it's that spirit of punk rock that I think Highway Kings just sort of conveys.
That was my point with Monday Morning Ant Brigade, kind of. Mm-hmm. You're back to your monotonous, boring life, you know?
Mm-hmm. And that's why that like touring music doesn't really resonate in other genres, because like touring doesn't suck if you're in any other genre, because if you can afford to be on tour, like dude, punk rockers are the only that tour without like being able to have dinner.
Yeah, dude, that's so true though.
Well, and
touring doesn't suck in any other genre.
Yeah, if you're touring, that means you're doing good in any other. If you're touring,
I've seen a lot of metal bands. I have to give them that. I've seen a lot of metal bands that toured. They were doing it just like the punk rockers.
Metals can be pretty. Metal doesn't aspire to be DIY, but there's a lot of DIY. Elements to it. But I think like yeah, because like when bands get big, they always have like their touring ballad, whereas like punk bands just have whole albums about touring. It's also because like touring's much harder. Like I said, touring's much harder in a punk band. Just
what's that Bon Jovi song? Cowboy. That's all about playing shows and touring. I think.
Yeah, which I know that process was way easier for Bon Jovi in the 80s. But I mean,
dude,
there's Wherever I May Roam by Metallica as a tour, like touring song. There's such a common.
Dude, is that really what that's about? I had no idea.
Yeah. Roamer, Wonder, Nomad, Vagabond, Wherever I May Roam. It's just like, and again, and it's always bands when they're like after the next album cycle, they kind of never toured at that same level again. But it's when you're in that youngness of a band, that's kind of all that's on your mind, because that's your whole like. There's a lot of like pop punk too. That's just kind of about too, because 20-year-olds don't generally, unless you're in the military, that's the only, or in like minor league baseball, are kind of the only other careers I get.
Right.
Similar to that, maybe like traveling if you work for like the railroad or something. But again, all those other careers, you still have a little bit better accommodations than the van. Okay.
That's I didn't know that Metallica song was about touring. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and they have a few of those road songs as they refer to them as. That the road becomes my bride. I'm stripped of all but pride. Now I got that song in my head. I'm trying to shake. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to talk about is something that's kind of off the board, but it was one that, as you said, is a personal one. Was the song "The Something Special" off of How I Spent My Summer Vacation. This is like a completely left, because it's very low key. It's the one that starts out, "We can't agree on a single thing. I don't know why. We almost killed each other on the inside." So I have two reasons. For one, it just happened to be on one of the Punk-O-Rama comps that I owned. So I just kind of, before I owned How I Spent My Summer Vacation, which I got a lot of Bouncing Souls through comps initially before I owned their album, so I was like, hey, that's just a good song, just generally. And now let me close the loop from earlier. And this is the last loop because of the last story. I talked about the sort of, I talked about both these, so all the characters I've talked about in different ways. There was the guy who I didn't kill his girlfriend, they had broken up, but like that guy that was indirectly responsible for me being into punk rock, because he had the mohawk and the criminal record and didn't like the Casualty because of the hairdressers. So there was that guy.
Dude,
so the other part of that
guy ended up being a poser, which is the funniest shit ever.
I hope he's like, I say this as someone who became a teacher. I hope he's like has the most corporate job of all time, just because of how he was back then. I don't even know what I want to accomplish with that, but I just kind of think that would be fun.
No, dude, it'd be pretty hilarious if he was like a corporate guy, but not like a VP, but like the little lapdog type.
Yeah,
where he had like a real not corporate, white collar. He had a white collar job that didn't pay him quite as much as he should be getting. That's the kind of job that guy needs.
He's totally got that. Anyway, so the other person I talked about was the person that I said
he drives a Prius.
yeah, as a Fiat driver, I'm not a hater here. Anyway, so this guy that I said, like, I kind of got him into music. Well, he was that particular female's her ex-partner. And again,
oh my goodness,
it was not a cheating situation, but it was just too, it was too close for comfort. Like, again, no one did anything.
You were hung up on this girl for a while, huh?
Yeah, I probably should have married her.
Are you still hung up on her?
No. But I should say, cause I had like dinner with her like 2 months ago, and not just as friends. But no, but looking back at it, like I shouldn't have married her, but she definitely, like, she totally like defined my life. Like, looking back at it, like, got me into punk. She got me into like activism as a friendship, like like education,
nice.
all that.
That's awesome.
She's just very influential on me, I guess I should say, without really, like, she had a huge influence on my life, getting me into punk, none the least of what those influences were. So this guy, so that happens again. So I was more wounded by the whole situation, and then so that's why my band in high school broke up, was over that situation, because of course the drummer and the bass player in mom's basement can have feuds over a girl, because bands will never stop doing this shit ever. So
dude,
anyway, so I don't know how I ended. So me and him were the co-founders. I'm not sure how I ended up. I kind of said some nasty stuff to him, so I guess I was the poor actor. Okay, I get it. Anyway, so it was a little tense, like 3 years. Anyway, one day the female, and again, I have a genuine like kind of friendship with her. She just comes into my work out of nowhere just to like say hi, hey, I haven't seen you. Like, and we, at last week everything was feudy, and it was the first time in my life, and it happens a lot as an adult, where no one really has to apologize because no one did anything wrong. Everyone just needed some time.
Yeah, you just need, and then you need to get reconnected.
Yeah, and then so like it was funny because literally I was the delivery driver at the time. I have the Punkorama CD. I put it in, and that song is on, like just on. It was where it was in the queue, and I was like, "Holy crap!" I don't even know why I hate these people, but I thought I hate it. And like all the lyrics, it's like all the lyrics suddenly, which are not, but they start filling in those blanks of like, "Oh, this is exactly." And I've just liked the song as a cool kind of emotional song that was really quite different. So that song has always had a nice little resonance of that. Again, I talked about family members passing away. I've talked about big relationships ending on this, and I kind of close it with more of a quaint story, but it was kind of like Bouncing Souls kind of helped me get, like, literally helped me get over that situation in a very specific way, so everyone could sort of move on with their lives.
Music, specifically punk, does that a lot, where it helps you like cope. You'll be able to address some, specific situations, address a specific scenario or whatever. But yeah, dude, the Bouncing Souls are probably one of the better bands at doing that. They write these songs that are so relatable, and they're so, while on one hand magnificent and important, they're so monotonous and daily grind at the same time. They are the everyman's punk rock band.
And I was saying, that's the appeal to them. Like, that's the appeal.
No,
like,
for sure.
You very much put in what that appeal. Like, they are sort of both. They are both the poets, like in a very legitimate way, and the working class band. Like, they have, like, they don't got to pretend like they're stupid because they're a working class band. Like, because they're, to me, there's no fronting with them whatsoever. Like, that's why their music sounds like a bunch of 50-year-old guys. What that would sound like if they made punk. That's what they're doing.
You know what? I never really thought about that, but they are very much comfortable in their own skin.
Yeah, and they sound like teenagers on The Good, Bad, and Argyle. Like, that's just kind
of. God, that album's so bad.
I think like they just were in tune with that a little sooner, and like so, and it was a lot of bands going that direction. Like I talked about it before, but like again, like No Use for a Name put out some stuff that I didn't really like right around the same time. I think Bouncing Souls were able to better keep their punk roots, even though like it doesn't really sound like the early punk stuff. It's still very clearly punk rock, and so some of that later No Use for a Name, I think you can argue is more alternative rock, whereas the later
a lot of bands did that.
It's still it's a variant of punk, but still I think you can categorize it to the extent that that stuff's punk. It's punk.
Yeah, they are very much a punk rock band. I love this band so much, dude. This was a fun week, dude.
Very fun week. It wasn't by accident that we basically told stories we didn't talk about these songs. We told stories, and I think it's because these songs are stories.
Oh, dude, my notes are a mess, dude. Like, and I've been fidgeting like crazy. My apologies, dude. I don't know what's going on with me lately, but my ADHD is kicking the shit out of me. I think I want to get something that I can sit here and fucking fool with while we're doing our podcast, because I can't seem to sit still. I'm like looking around. I assure you I am listening and I am paying attention. I just want to make that very clear. Well, because if somebody's watching and doesn't know us, they're gonna think I'm being an asshole, but I'm not. I'm just, if I focus on like a piece of paper and like that's what I've been doing, is like doodling. If I do that, I can hear you better and I'll retain the information better. Now we're getting into like psychiatry and shit.
Literally,
dude. That's what I meant. Yeah, like straight up, dude. Yeah, this was a great episode. I had a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and real quick reiterate our top 10 Bouncing Soul songs just for a little clip. So what is it?
Let me make sure I only have 10 so I can get it.
Cool. All right, I'll go first. So, my top 10 Bouncing Soul songs are in this order. The Ballad of Johnny X off of Maniacal Laughter. Monday Morning Ant Brigade off of Hopeless Romantic. Night Train is number 8 off of Anchors Away. Number 7 is The Gold Song off the Gold Record. Number 6 is Better Days off of Anchors Away. Number 5 is Manthem off of How I Spent My Summer Vacation. Number 4 is Sing Along Forever off of Anchors Away. Number 3 is Lean On Sheena off the Gold Record. Number 2 is Kids and Heroes off of Anchors Away. And the best Bouncing Soul song is True Believers off of How I Spent My Summer Vacation. And that is not up for debate, folks.
All right. So my top 10 ish in no particular order are Highway Kings, letters from Iraq. Here we go. Play, Anchors Away, The Something Special, Hopeless Romantic, True Believers, Night Train, The Gold Song, and of course, The Ballad of Johnny X.
Bro, great songs, dude.
All these songs to choose from. We rarely have crossover, and we had like the most crossover, like the biggest pool we've ever chosen from, and we had probably the most amount of crossover.
Right. I'm pretty anxious to get this Alkaline Trio list because I think
I was going to say I was going to say before this week, but now we have 3 bands. So Rancid and Alkaline Trio are kind of our sister bands, but I think we have another one now. We love
Bouncing Souls.
I think, on that level. Like you like them more than I do, but I think we are fluent in Bouncing Soulsies for sure.
Very much. Not to be super like subject changey, but check your microphone connection later and just make sure that it's in all the way. I don't know. It wasn't like it was a little bit. It wasn't clicking. It was like dropping out for like split seconds every so often. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't enough for me to like stop the podcast. But I just wanted you to be aware of it so that way if you do something later that you'll know. Yeah, but awesome, man. Well, everybody, thank you for hanging out. This has been a long podcast. We'll be back in about a week with our top 10 favorite bands, and that'll probably be a very interesting podcast. Top 10 punk bands to be specific, because I'm not going to be putting Motley Crue, Metallica, or Devil Wears Prada, or Shakira, or NSYNC. None of those bands or groups or artists will be on that list. It'll all be punk rock music. So, yeah. Have a good night, everybody. Peace.